I honestly have no idea what's going on with this chair and why it keeps adjusting itself. It does not want me to be great. So if you see me fiddling with this chair, please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. And pray my strength in the Lord because, Lord, it keeps sinking, right? So hey y'all, it's me, your favorite friend and host, Kiana, and you are listening to Chats with Friends, the show where we talk about all things life, love, relationships, healing, all of the things. And thank you so much for stopping by. How the heck have you been? How have I been, you ask? Y'all, we have so much to talk about. So grab your drink of choice and a snack so we can chat. Anyway, welcome back to another episode of Chats with Friends. I am your host, Kiana, and I am like super duper glad that you are here with me today. So thank you for tuning in, clicking on my face, turning your dial, wherever you're listening. Thank you for being here, and tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. What we do over here on Chats with Friends, and it's a space and a place where we just chop it up about all the things, right? All the things life, all the things love, all the things relationships, all the things healing, all the things frustrations, all the things work, all the things, kids, family, all of the things. So grab your drink of choice and a snack so we can chat. Since we last spoke, I have a couple things I want to share with you all today. But before we do that, before we get into any of that, we are going to do a little icebreaker, and I'm going to pick from these and cards. Those of you who have been listening for some time are familiar with the and cards. I found these four, and I will say in full transparency, I did review them first. So I have some idea of what they are, but I don't know of the four. I'm having a hot flash. Of the four that I have selected here, which one I'm going to pick. So I have some idea of what they're about, but we'll see which one I draw and which one that comes up for me to chat about today, to break the ice for our conversation today. And the card that I picked says, and this is from the, what is this deck called? This is the Friends edition, the and Friends edition box. So this says 199 questions, explore the relationships around you. So the card says, what change in me could I make to improve my relationship with my family? Funny you should ask. Funny you should ask. I think that's a great question. What change in me could I make to improve my relationship with my family? And I think the thing that first comes to mind when I think about this question is that really there's a lot of times and or a lot of opportunities for me to look at members of my family and point my finger at them, at what they're doing, not doing, what they're saying, not saying, how they're responding, not responding, etc. And putting all of this burden, responsibility, whatever it is that I'm sort of imposing on them, judgment, that's what it is, judgment, the judgment that I'm imposing on them around what they're doing or not doing. And really the responsibility lies in me. I have no control over anyone in my family. I have no control over anyone, period. The only person that I have control over is Kiana. So the question is, I think, correctly worded in that it's causing me to reflect on me and what my responsibility is and what I can do to improve the relationships that I have in my family. And so I think the first thing that comes to mind is just that judgment. I feel like sometimes I in my mind, I have these stories in my mind about these expectations and judgments that I have put on my family that I have not even necessarily even communicated what my expectations are. So there's like these unwritten rules and things that I'm harboring in my heart and in my mind and in my soul about them that I haven't even shared with them. And then I'm judging them on how they're not living up to those things that I've never ever communicated to them. So my responsibility is to use my words. You're a big girl, Kiana. You can talk, speak, like open your mouth and share. Say the things that are on your heart and your mind to share. And I think when I reflect on that, I think sort of my resistance in sharing with my family and just people in general is this fear. That's a trend. Anyway, this fear of how they may respond to what I say, or how they may treat me after I say what I say, what if they may retaliate, like all of the things, right? And so I think there is a resistance to say how I might feel for fear of that. The reality is that what happens when I don't share what I feel, then I'm making some assumptions, right? I'm assuming that my family or friends or whomever it is that I have something to say about that don't have the capacity to absorb, or that they're automatically going to think something negative, etc. And that's not a reflection of them. That's a reflection of me. So I'm super clear about that. But like this thought that they're not going to be able to take it, or they're not going to be able to handle it. Like, who do I think I am? Right? That I feel like the person that I'm sharing with can't handle what it is I'm going to say. That I'm so, whatever it is, this story I've written in my head about what I have to say will be too much, or too much for them to handle. So that is my bad. And that's something that I get to continue to work through, right? Because this has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with me. So I think part of the things, what I could change is to open my mouth and to share and to say what it is I'm feeling. Not just, say what I'm feeling from the negative perspective of like the things that they're not doing right or wrong, but also share what I'm feeling about how grateful I am that you are my mom, or grateful that I am that you are my sister, or, the good things, finding some joy and some gratitude in the relationships that I do have with my family members. So that is what I think I could do to improve my relationships with my family, and just sort of this posture of that it's me, like it's me, and what can I do, and not what my family needs to change or what they need to do different, but really this is about me and how I can be the catalyst for improving those relationships. And whether or not they do anything different or not, that's neither here nor there. It's about me. So I pose that question back to you. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be relationships with your family, but just relationships in general. So I challenge you to explore like what you could do differently to change the relationships that you have, be it family, be it friends, be it co-workers, whatever romantic relationships, because the responsibility, beginning, middle, and end of the day, is ours, right? To change ourselves. We can't change anybody else. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Shifting gears just a bit, what y'all drinking first of all? So me, I have sparkling water, my favorite thing, sparkling water and Crystal Light drops. Pretty basic, pretty standard thing for me to drink on a regular basis. I drink lots and lots of sparkling water, 3-ish plus cans a day. 3-ish plus at least 3 cans of sparkling water a day. And I always add these Crystal Light drops to them, my favorite currently is blackberry lemonade. And sometimes I'll zhuzh it up and add limes or lemons or mint or, different things to give it a little pizzazz. But on a just regular basic level, that's what I'm drinking pretty much all day. I take that back, not necessarily all day, because I drink regular water too. I definitely need to drink more regular water, but I digress. That's what I'm drinking. What y'all drinking? That's the question. Stay focused, Kiana. Stay focused. The question is, what are you drinking? What's your drink of choice today? So, and your snack. I just got done eating some jerk plantain chips. So, Trader Joe's. I went to Trader Joe's to get my weekly flowers. So a few years ago, I started a practice of buying myself flowers every week. And so Trader Joe's is my place of choice to buy said flowers. And then when I'm in Trader Joe's, undoubtedly, I have venture over to the snack section. I am not here to argue and tussle with anyone around my thought process that Trader Joe's has the best snacks in America. In all of these here United States of America, Trader Joe's has the best snacks. It is not up for debate. It is not up for discussion. It is not a tussle with your mama. It is not up. I'm not even willing to argue with you about it because they by far, hands down, 100% have the best snacks. And so they have these jerk flavored plantain chips that are clearly sent from heaven above. They are God anointed and they are God sent, and they are so amazing. And I have to weigh them out on a scale to control my portions with them because I literally will eat the entire bag. So shout out to Trader Joe's and the jerk plantain chips because they are something special. So I just got done eating a serving of them, so I can't have any more. So there's that. So I already had them. I already had my snack of choice. So that's that. Moving right along. So I just recently came back from a trip. So let me just catch you all up for a little bit here. I just came back from a trip from New York. So also a couple years ago. So you'll notice there's a trend, right? It's actually been more than a couple years, but 2021, 22, well, that is a couple years. Anywho, who's counting? But somewhere around there, on the heels of a breakup, I started to intentionally do some things and implement some practices in my life to sort of get me from one day to the next, because Jesus, that was a really hard time. So one of the things that I implemented is that I decided that I was going to take myself on a trip every quarter. So I started in 22, but the first year that I did this, my second trip was to New York. The first time I had taken myself to New York by myself. I had been to New York before, a couple other times with other people, but not by myself. And so I took myself to New York in 22, and it was amazing. It was just a great trip. And I just remember sort of this sort of carelessness that I had about me. I walked all over New York. Well, not all over. I take that back. I walked all over Manhattan, which is where I stayed, and which is where I normally had stayed previous times in New York. Go through Times Square, take myself out to eat. I had went there specifically to go to a couple plays and musicals, so I did that and took myself to nice dinners and just really had a good time around New York. And there was a sense of freedom. I didn't feel like I would walk up and down the streets by myself all day and night. There's hundreds and thousands of people walking around New York all the time. So I never felt I never felt unsafe. I was like, if something pop off, there's going to be hundreds of people that are going to be able to see it. So, but I just didn't, that wasn't an I wasn't walking around guarded as if I was preparing for something to happen. So, and I remember meeting a woman when I went to the Empire State Building on a tour. I remember meeting a woman that actually was traveling by herself as well. that is actually from Chicago, or actually lives in Chicago as well. So I met her, we hung out, it was amazing. And so it was just a good trip. And so I went back last year, but I went back with a friend last year to New York and for a Seahawks game. So this year I took myself again by myself. And this time I stayed in Harlem. I knew that I wanted to stay somewhere different. And so I stayed in Harlem. I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that I wanted to stay somewhere different. I stayed on 125th in Harlem. If you know anything about Harlem, you know the significance of 125th Street in Harlem. It is the street that the Apollo Theater is on, and subsequently my hotel was literally next door to the Apollo Theater, which I did not know and did not expect. My reason for going to New York this trip was to go to the Apollo Theater Amateur Night at the Apollo, as well as to Alicia Keys' musical Hell's Kitchen, that's loosely based on her life, both shows were amazing. Both were just so much fun. But that wasn't, when folks have asked me about the highlights of my trip, those things I think were expected to be good, and I didn't have any other thought otherwise that they weren't going to be good. So yes, they were good. Yes, they were amazing. But the highlights of my trip were those unexpected moments, those unplanned moments that just happened, right? And I remember thinking as I went into this trip, I was like, I really want to embrace and embody this space of, I'm just going to get up every day, and sort of let the day take me where the day takes me. Not have things so prescribed and things so planned out. Other than those two things, I really wanted to just kind of flow with the day as the day unfolded. And so I did that for the most part. But even inside of that, there was some other unexpected things that I experienced during my trip there. And the first one was I was headed to the Brooklyn Museum to see Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats art exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum. And so I am in the lobby of my hotel, and I've called an Uber, because that's what you do. You call an Uber when you want to go places around, right? So I call an Uber, and the Uber, it said like $78. And I was like, are you kidding, right? Like, I was just like, I don't know that I want to spend $80 one way to get to this museum. I was standing in the lobby, and I just was kind of shaking my head in this space of like, dang, like, what do I do? And the doorman of the hotel, a great guy, he had been so helpful the whole time with everyone, this African dude. And I say that based on his accent. A very helpful, very well-dressed older dude. He was like, sister, come sit here. What's wrong? What's wrong with you? What's going on? And I'm like, I'm just trying to figure myself out. Like, this Uber is going to cost me $80, and I'm not sure if I want to spend $80 to go to the museum. He's like, sit down. You tell me what's going on, right? And so I tell him the whole story, and then he's like, catch the subway. And I'm like, I don't do public transportation, is what I want to say. I didn't say it out loud, but I'm thinking, I don't do public transportation. Like, that's not my thing. And mostly because public transportation scares me, right? Keeping it all the way 100. Like, public transportation scares me. It feels very much, I feel very exposed. I feel very vulnerable on public transportation. I feel like anyone can get on public transportation with anything and do anything. And so I just have had this unhealthy fear of public transportation. And I mean, I know, a lot of that that's a whole nother conversation for another day about my control issues. But I know there feels like a lack of control, right, in those spaces. Like, when I'm in my car, I feel like I can control where I'm going and how I go, and I can go around and through and whatever things and that I don't want to, encounter, right? So on subways and things like that, you can't do that. And so anyway, the long way of saying, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And this African man who suggests that I take a subway out of nowhere, very random. And I say yes. And he's like, go down to Lenox. Go down a couple blocks to Lenox Street and you go, it's right there. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, do I need to transfer? Like, what happened? I'm all in my head about it. And I just was like, I remember saying to myself, Kiana, you're fine. Kiana, you're fine. Kiana, you're fine. Right. So I get down there. I walked a couple blocks. I get on the subway, and it's so super crowded, right? So I have to stand a majority of the trip. And there are some characters on the subway. There are some characters, and there was lots of moments where I was just chuckling and just sort of looking around like, whoa, right? And there's, obviously people going to and from work. Like this is a weekday. So, people are going to and from work or handling their business, or just a myriad of people are on the subway. And, of course I was fine, right? Because I'm here, but, literally the stop that I got off of, I go up the stairs and literally the museum is right there. Like literally you walk up the steps and it's right in front of you. So I was like, great. Like it was a one stop, no transfer sort of situation. So I was so excited, that I did it. And I was I remember being so proud of myself about something that seemed so seemingly small, that I just sort of overcame my fear and got on a subway. And long story long, the museum, the exhibit, the Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats, called the Giants exhibit, was amazing. And there was a sense of sort of pride. And I remember walking through there and getting somewhat emotional throughout the exhibit as I saw all the pieces of art and all the different displays of creativity, and just sort of, Black folks, man, we are all that. God did his thing when he made, I'm not saying, I'm just saying, like, wow, right? Like, wow. And just the creativity, you can look at things and you can just, not that God didn't create everything, because he did, but it's just like, there's certain things you're just like, yeah, that is God breathed. Like, that is like from him, like directly, a direct download, right? And so it was amazing. It was definitely a lot I was able to take in. There was lots of artists, from young up and coming artists to very well established artists, all sorts of displays of art and sculptures, and the timeline, and there was reference to the Harlem Renaissance, and just, it was just amazing. I mean, I say all that, I don't even know how else to say it other than it was amazing. And so I did that, and then I caught the subway back to my hotel, and it was great. It was fine. And then later that same day is when I went to the musical, which was in which was near Times Square, like in the theater district. So I did catch a Uber there. I didn't catch the subway there. I was dressed up. I had on heels, all that stuff. So I was like, I'm not going to catch the subway down here in that. That just didn't seem like the right mode of transportation for how I was dressed. But the musical was great. I definitely walked out of there with an entirely new and renewed appreciation for Alicia Keys and her gift and her music. And I completely sort of forgotten how talented she is and how much music she has created and given the culture, how many awards she has. Like she's nothing to sneeze at. So it was just really what's the word, encouraging to see sort of the evolution of who she is into who she is today. So that was amazing. And the second sort of highlight was I also went to the Metropolitan Museum. And then after that, I had some time, for the rest of the day. I had some time. So I was like, I'm going to walk back. And I looked at my little, tracking, whatever, GPS thing. And it said 57 minutes or something walk. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I have time. I do an hour walk at home often. So an hour is not a big deal. So I start my walking. I walk a couple blocks, and I got my headphones on, and I'm just walking, and then I see these like divvy bike city. They're called city bikes there, and I was like, And also, Central Park is literally like next door to the Met. And another fear of mine is Central Park. Because first of all, Central Park is massive. I had no clue that Central Park was so big. It is ginormous. So Central Park is also been a fear of mine. One, for that reason, because it's ginormous. Two, because of all the stories you hear about Central Park. Three, because there's rats, big ass rats running around, and I'm just scared of it. I'm scared of it. Whatever, say what you want, but I just had my thing about Central Park. So I see the bikes, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get a bike. And so literally on the spot, I actually passed the bikes and walked for maybe 5 or so minutes, and something just kept coming back to me. So I walked back, rented the bike, and rode the bike through Central Park. It was totally beautiful. Back to my hotel. And it was a beautiful day. It was so fun, and it was so random, and it was so small. But I was, again, another moment where I was like super proud of myself for overcoming my fear. And it may seem like a small thing, but like it just was so unexpected. I didn't go to New York and say this trip is gonna be about conquering my fears or anything like that. It definitely was. That was not on my radar. So the fact that that happened, I was super proud of myself, and I'm so grateful that I did. And I got to just experience a sense of freedom, and I think that's the thing when I reflect back on my trips to New York. There's this feeling of levity, right? Like there's this lightness that I feel when I'm there, and this sense of sort of this freedom that I feel when I'm there. That, yeah, it's just sort of childlike flow and ease, and sort of like not a care in the world sort of thing, that I can't say that I experience on a regular basis. And so I was actually talking to my therapist about it once I got back, and she challenged me and asked me the question of, what do I need to do? Sort of reflect on that and what was present in order for me to create more of those types of moments on a regular basis. Like, how do I create this feeling of freedom, levity, childlikeness that I can reproduce and recreate on a regular basis here in Chicago. So that I'll keep you posted on how that comes along, but that's a thing as well. Speaking of fear, I probably a month or so ago, I bought this study book called Strength in the Struggle, a Bible study workbook for women on letting go of fear and anxiety. And the author's name is Lauren Eibach. And I don't necessarily know how or where I found this book on down to the Amazon. I don't know. I know it wasn't like referred to me by anybody. Nobody was like, you should go get this. But I know that I've been dealing with a lot of fear and anxiety. And I was telling a friend last night, I was just like, one thing I know for sure is that God is definitely dealing with me with regards to fear, anxiety, and sort of the antidote to that being trust. And there's some things that feel really clear to me, and I'm clear about the fact that it's fear, and I'm clear about what I need to do. Where my fear and anxiety is like what to do. I know that I need to do something, but I'm like, okay, now what do I do now that I have this information? I've been asking for signs. I've been asking for confirmation. He's given it to me, and I'm like, okay, so now what? So now I have some, he's still working through me and with me around, my fears. And I know that that's a big thing for me. And that's something that I've been working with myself on, and sort of tapping into and understanding what I'm fearful of, why I'm fearful. And, I don't want to sound all cliche-ish, but really fear is not real. I mean, like, I don't even know how else to put it, but fear is not real. I mean, well, I take that back. There are some things that are real. Like when you're in imminent danger, that fear of, like, when you're faced with something that is actually going to physically harm you. That is fear. But these other fears, specifically the fear that I'm talking about for myself in my head that I've made up, it's not real. It's not real. It's not real. So there's that. I understand that it's not real, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist in my head, right? And so it's something that I have to, like, continuously, like, have conversations with myself about and understand how to overcome these thoughts, because that's exactly what they are. They're things that I've created in my head that haven't even happened yet. That's what anxiety is. Anxiety is like having a feeling about something that hasn't even happened yet. So I'm creating this energy around something that could potentially happen, that might happen, that is bound to happen, whatever it is, but the reality is it hasn't happened yet. And so there's this feeling of anxiety about something that is not, and that's sort of further confirms the fact that fear is not real from that perspective, right? Again, setting aside imminent danger, you're fearful of someone harming you, that fear, as opposed to this fear of these situations that don't even exist and haven't happened yet. So I'm just speaking for me, and that's sort of my interpretation of what fear is that I'm experiencing in this moment, is really these situations that I have a lot of energy around that haven't even happened yet. And I'm like, well, what if? What happens when? And what? Child, you making up all kind of stories in your head that haven't even happened. And even if I was to look back and pull something from the past and sort of try to stand it up against what it is that I'm facing right now, the reality is that situation and this situation are not the same. There might be some similarities to them, but they're not the same. So the outcome may or may not be the same. So again, it just brings me back to this conversation with myself around getting all wrapped around the axle about things that are not even real. So there's that. So I say all that to say that I bought this book. Remember I was talking about this book? So anyway, I bought this book. And I've gone through all 9 lessons, and I started to go back over them again today, starting with lesson 1. And I just wanted to share just a few thoughts and reflections on lesson 1 that for me, it's to further sort of embed what I read and what I think I understand about it, to sort of just give it some stick-to-itness. So if I say it out loud, that'll just help me absorb it and learn it, as well as sort of share it with you all. So lesson 1 is deliverance from fear. And the reference, or the Bible scripture that it references, is Psalms 34:4. And the scripture says, I sought the Lord and he delivered me from all my fears. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of words before and after that in that chapter. So chapter 34 consists of, 22 verses. So this is just one of those 22 verses. So I say that from the perspective of, again, having a conversation with a girlfriend about, I grew up in church, and how some of the scriptures that we've been taught over time, where someone has propped up one scripture and it's completely out of context. It doesn't even match what the words that are before it or after it. I say all that to say that this particular psalm was written by David. And David, now let's keep this in mind, that I have been reading my Bible for like 14 seconds, literally. And so I'm no Bible scholar by any stretch of the imagination, by any stretch. I am in this phase of trying to understand, trying to get a greater understanding of what God has to say to me, and about my life and the situations that I'm faced with. And so what I'm sharing is my own understanding. Ain't nobody told me nothing. This is what was been downloaded to me. So that's what I'm fixing to share. So I'm no Bible scholar by any stretch of the imagination. But what it is causing me, what I'm doing is like reading these words and sort of trying to understand them, understanding where there's repetition and why there's repetition. What is the principle that God is trying to share in this scripture? And all of that requires some context as to what was actually happening during the time that this particular passage or these passages were written. Whew, ciao. So, long story long. You'll notice I never say long story short, because my stories are rarely ever short. So I like to somehow or another go the very, 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 very long way around to get to where I'm trying to get to. It's way more scenic that way. And there's a lot more, to take in when you go the long way. So anyway, David wrote this psalm. And David prior to that, David was sort of on the run. David had slain Goliath. You all, well, maybe you don't, but there's a story of David slaying Goliath. Goliath was this ginormous person that, they went toe to toe. And David was a young person, and he killed Goliath, who had all of these weapons and all of this armor, and David killed him with a slingshot. So that's a different, there's a lot wrapped up in that, but sort of what I'm trying to get to is how we get to this psalm is David had killed Goliath. He was on the run. Saul was trying to kill him. Saul's son, Jonathan, I think his name was Jonathan, was David's homeboy. Like, they was besties. And so Jonathan was trying to help David escape. So David's on the run, and he's trying to escape Saul from trying to kill him. So he done killed Goliath. Now he's running from Saul, trying to save his life. And he runs to this, escapes to this place called, what was the name of the place? Goth. That's the name of the place. Goth, Gath. And so he gets to Goth, and they recognize him in Goth. And then the folks in Goth, the king is after him, and he's afraid. David is afraid of, being recognized. And so he pretends like he's crazy. So he literally starts acting like he's crazy, like slobbering at the mouth and doing all the things, right? Just so that he wouldn't get killed, because it was uncustomary for them to kill folks that had mental sort of challenges in that time. So he played the fool so that he could escape. So in all of that turmoil and chaos and all of that, David wrote this psalm. And the psalm is really a psalm of thanksgiving. It is a psalm what I understand, psalm, the word psalm, Psalm, translation is a song, Song. And so he wrote this song of thanksgiving on the heels of all of that trauma and turmoil and running and folks trying to kill him and just a whole lot, playing the fool and all of that. So it just sort of brings you to David's mindset when he wrote this song. And sort of my takeaway from that, um, my takeaway from all of that is that throughout it all and during it all, he kept his mind, his eyes, his focus on God, right? And so the scripture, or the scripture that is for this particular study is, I sought the Lord and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. So the long and short of it is, when you seek him, you keep your focus. Where is your focus? And keeping focused on him despite the challenges, despite the turmoil, despite the fears, despite the trauma, despite all of that. If I keep my focus on him, he will deliver me from it all. So, and the reality is, and there's a situation that I'm sifting through right now in my life and with my family, that I was talking to my ex-husband yesterday about, and I just was like, it's clear that I am not equipped. I am not equipped to figure this one out. I'm just not. And I don't necessarily know or believe that God puts us like deliberately. I don't know. But I believe that he permits and allows in his sovereignty and all of that other stuff for things to happen, so that he can get the glory, because he's selfish like that, and he kind of wants us to, he wants to be in relationship with us. And I know that when we feel like we got it going good, okay, I'll just say, when I feel like I got it going good, like life is good, things are going well, the bank account is full, the man is acting right, like my skin is clear, like all the things, then I'd somehow or another forget about God. And I mean, I'm just keeping it all the way 100. I think there is this sort of tendency when we feel like we got it together. Okay, God, I don't need you no more. I'm good. And then let the proverbial shit hit the fan. We run to God. And so I am really in a space and a place where I'm clear that the situation that my family is navigating is one that we cannot navigate without God, clearly. Despite all of, so I say all that to encourage you that not to take your eyes off of God. I don't know what your faith is. I don't know what you believe. I don't know any of that. But what I do know is that this whole, like, in the beginning was God, right? And so before there was anything, there was God, and then came, everything else. And so whether or not you believe in him or not, he is the source and he is the creator of all the things. And so in my learning and in my time, I'm sort of coming to this, realization and remembrance that he runs this whole show. Like, he created all the things, including me. And that as long as I keep and put, because sometimes my eyes will wander, and when they do, my prayer is, God, that you bring me back to remembrance, right? That I keep my mind on him and what he has done, not just what he did for David and delivering David, but what he's done for me in my 52 years, from all of the things, from molestation, from abusive relationships, from losing my job several times, all of that, right? I mean, I could go on. That's just the three that come to mind right now. But in all of that, there is like, I don't even need to refer to to how God delivered David, I can look at my own life, and I can have a sense of confidence. Like when I look back and I think about how I came through and managed to navigate that, and managed to, if I want to just bring it even closer, navigate getting on the subway. And that may not seem like a big deal, right? Navigate walking or riding the bike through Central Park, in the most immediate situation of fear that I faced. So in all of those situations, in every single solitary one of them, he brought me out. And not even, like, I think the other thing is not even in all those cases did I have my mind on him. I was not like seeking him. The scripture says, I sought the Lord. I wasn't seeking him in a lot of these situations. I was not seeking him. And even in that, so I say that to say that that's just a reminder to myself that I literally have nothing to fear. I literally have nothing to fear. I can walk around with my chest out, boasting and confident in God. Not confident in me, but confident in the God that created me. And so, yeah, I think fear and faith and trust are the things that I'm wrestling with. And I say wrestle because I'm wrestling and tussling and rumbling about those things in the current and present state. Yeah. So that's it. That's all for me this week. I'm so super glad that you came and hung out with me. And I look forward to chatting with you next week. Bye. Have a good week.